Good afternoon. Welcome to Cabinet on Tuesday, 7th of January, 3 p.m. in the Council Chamber. Welcome to the meeting. We've got everybody here. I've got apologies except for Councillor Muscan. She's given apologies, and Councillor Will Simpson hopefully will be joining us very shortly. And Councillor Eric first as well. He's given his apologies as well. Item 2, declaration of interest. Just bring to your attention item 12, page 306. If any members are in arrears, I'm sure you all know that you were able to take part, but I'm assuming that everybody is in, have got their council tax up to date, so I don't think that'll be an issue. But if not, please let me know. Item 3, admission of the public. We don't have any members of the public. Item 4, deputations and petitions. No deputations and petitions. Questions by members of the public. We don't have any members of the public, so there's no questions. Questions by elected members. We've got no members in the chamber. Any members online that want to ask a question? No members indicating online that they want to speak. Item 7, fraud prevention, anti-bribery and anti-corruption policy. Councillor Paul Davies, over to you.
Yep, thank you, Leader. The Council... I thought somebody had fallen over then. Sorry, I'll start again. The Council has had a fraud strategy for many years, but an anti-fraud strategy, not a fraud strategy, but it is some time since it was updated. And so we have an updated document which covers fraud prevention, anti-bribery, anti-corruption policy, and there's also sections in terms of how we approach preventing or mitigating the risk of fraud, and an anti-bribery policy statement and an anti-corruption policy statement. The key message, the core message, is one of fraud, bribery and corruption will not be tolerated by this Council, and that we will take action against anybody who perpetrates such action, that is, such action against the Council. The Council's current strategy includes quite a great deal of detailed information, and that's much more relevant to the operational issues. And the new policy document actually emphasises areas of culture, governance and prevention, which includes capability, capacity and competence. And it recognises that the vulnerable suffer most from fraud as part of governance. There is also within the policy that is expected that a Cabinet member will have responsibility to act as a champion in this area. So the anti-bribery policy statement addresses how the Council will seek to mitigate bribery risk. Officers will also provide more detailed operating procedures and instructions to support the new overarching policy. This will include fraud response plan, an action plan and a whistleblowing statement. So moving on to officers' recommendations, which as portfolio holder I support. Cabinet are asked to approve the new strategy and supporting appendices. Also asked to note the specific responsibility for the corporate portfolio holder to act as the anti-fraud, bribery and corruption champion. And then finally, Cabinet asked to approve that officers may make any amendments to the appendices in the overall policy and other information associated with the implementation of this policy, subject to consultation with the corporate portfolio holder. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any members? No, thank you, Paul. Councillor Paul Davies. Just to summarise, we won't tolerate any fraud, bribery or corruption, and anybody who even contemplates on doing anything of such behaviour, we will take action. So, on that note, can we have a show of hands? Thank you, members. We'll move on to the next item, item 10, Domestic Abuse Strategy 2022-27. Councillor Carl Patterson.
Thank you. First off, I really must thank Shani Atwell and her team for the excellent work that they've done on producing this strategy. It has been a bit of a long time in the gestation, partly because we were expecting to agree a new strategy or refresh the old strategy in 2021. But we received, a bit unexpectedly, some additional funding for domestic abuse, or to tackle domestic abuse from the government in the autumn of 21, which led us to reviewing the whole of the strategy and starting again from fresh with this strategy, which is now 22-27. It's been through also quite a long period of consultation with various different partners from the Communities Board, and it was actually signed off by the Communities Board last June. And it's here today for the Cabinet, on behalf of the Council, to approve it as a partner of the Communities Board. Following the very welcome additional funding from the government, we have been able to take a slightly different route to tackling domestic abuse, which is sort of, it's more about prevention and early intervention than previously. Also, it's about tackling the whole family approach, not just an individual victim, but a victim is always a member of certainly a small family or an extended family. Supporting perpetrators to change their behaviour, which is something which has not necessarily been a priority in the past, but is seen more so now. And that the response to victims, there's a multiple agency response to victims, because it's never just about the physical violence or coercion or abuse that a victim suffers from. There's also always something like housing issues or other issues that go along with that. So a lot of this money that we now have for domestic abuse strategy is about supporting victims to maintain and have access to safe and stable housing. I do have to say, though, I cannot sort of recommend this without saying that domestic abuse, misogyny and violence against women and girls are the most heinous crimes and the most prolific as well. And just yesterday's announcement about the policeman from the Met, whose name I don't want to remember, to be honest, just shows how ingrained this is in our society and how it is so difficult even to trust those people that we should be able to trust in situations such as these, and it's just not right. So it is very important that we do adopt and implement this strategy in full, that we continue to do our utmost to alleviate or to get rid of this abuse and violence and misogyny from our communities. So I am asking for Cabinet to approve this strategy here today. And I hope you will all support it. I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mather, and then Councillor Paul Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I welcome this report. I wholeheartedly support all of the areas covered. It's definitely and will always be needed. Earlier on, I was just talking to my younger daughter who lives in London, and she was saying, if she sees a police officer, she has to run the other way because she's always scared. And I had to explain that not everyone is the same, but we've got to be able to support those suffering, the victims, their families and our communities must feel safe. There will always be people that need protection, and it's good to hear that we received some extra funding, updated this policy, and the adoption is key to moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, I absolutely support this, and I know I'm probably repeating things we've said before within cabinet discussions, but I'll keep on repeating them. The impact on domestic violence, in terms of not just the victim herself and sometimes himself, but more often than not is herself. There's also a huge impact on the children. I think sometimes people forget, that impact, not just in the immediate sense, but actually what it does in terms of the future life chances of those children, and in particular, the way in which we unfortunately and tragically see quite often young boys copy that behaviour in the future is a huge issue. And when I was on Children's Scrutiny a few years ago, we sat in some meetings in the front door, and it really is beyond understanding, I think, when you live what we would term, if you like, a relatively normal and uncomplicated life compared to the lives that some families have, and to listen to some of the stories of what some women go through is incredible. Stories of men climbing through windows because they've split in terms of the partnership, climbing through windows with machetes, threatening the children in front of the mother, attacking the mother, both in sexually and physically in front of children. It really is very difficult, I think, for people to understand. So I think this probably can't. There can't be many more important strategies than this. So absolutely support this, yep, we'll definitely do that going forward as well.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davis. Councillor Bill Armour. Bill, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Leader. Just, if I may make a couple of comments. The first one is, and actually Councillor Davis has just touched on this, that in today's society we have many different relationships, and we have male-male relationships and we have male-female relationships. In both of those, males may of course be the victims of domestic violence. I don't think we should forget that. The other thing I'd say, as a retired police officer, I can't remember this person's name at the moment, the latest serving Metropolitan Police Officer to have done disgusting things. I can't think of nice words to say about him, but I certainly endorse the original comments about this particular officer, soon to be ex-officer, is totally disgusting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to make any comments? Thank you, Councillor Carol Patterson. It's a really important strategy that we have today, and we can't play it down. We've got to take it very, very seriously, especially on the back of yesterday's announcement, which was really appalling. But majority of men actually fully stand shoulder to shoulder with women, and it's completely out of order that a few men who actually resort to that kind of behaviour. We need to actually speak out, and we need to speak out as a community. Men need to speak out, and that's why it was really, really important that a few years ago we became an organisation, a council that adopted the White Ribbon campaign, and every November we do actually remember that over the few days, and we do actually not just remember, but we actually put in place actions that actually put safety of women and girls and mums and sisters at the forefront. And we need to actually put capacity back into our communities. We need to actually work with the place partnerships that you're leading on, Cathy, and also review the approach to commissioning. We have to keep on making sure that we review this policy and at the same time make them step changes to eradicate this. One victim is one too many, and we will make sure we try and eradicate it as much as we can. On that note, can we have a show of hands to approve that report? Thank you, members. Next item is item 9, 2022-23 Mid-Year Corporate Performance and Impact Report. Councillor Paul Davis.
Thanks. Yep, this report provides an overview of progress that we've made on the deliverables in the council plan. And these deliverables actually contribute to the shared Kirklees outcomes and the council's efficient and effective ambition. It provides information on the work and activities carried out through 22-23, and it was actually written, the report itself, in November, so clearly it tracks up until that period. An update on the headline indicators for Kirklees shared outcomes is provided in each outcome section, and when known, the report also provides an update on the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic and inequalities. As you look at the report, when you look through it, you will see that it outlines the headline achievements and challenges related to each outcome in the highlight section, which is very useful to give that snapshot immediately of what's been achieved. And certainly, as a cabinet, we can then use this to look at an overview of the council's performance and impact in relation to the council plan deliverables, and again contributing to our overall shared outcomes as a council. So in terms of next steps and timelines, the next corporate report, an impact report, will be produced as an end of year report, and that will be 22-23. There will be an update on the priority actions and deliverables in the council plan 21-23, with a continued focus on understanding and responding to inequalities and demonstrating the quality and impact of council activity. The report is here for Cabinet to note. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to support this report for information, and it makes for interesting reading. And I'm actually looking at Clean and Green, which starts at page 120 and goes on to page 129, outlines the work in the area of environment, and I'm heartened to see that we are doing well. We can always do better, but it's all about making sure that our communities enjoy high quality, clean and green environment, and that's the aim. And hopefully, with helps of our staff and our residents, we can all enjoy the environment we live in. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nahid, and thank you for all the hard work you do in terms of clean and green and all the place-based stuff in terms of the environment. And I'm glad you actually highlighted that, because that is probably quite a big challenging area. Carry on doing the excellent work you're doing with your team. On that note, we all agreed to approve that report. Thank you, members. We'll move on to the next item, which is item 10, Kirklees School Funding Arrangements for financial year 2023-2024. Councillor Carol Patterson, over to you.
Thank you. This report sets out how schools will be funded over the next year. I mean, the funding on the whole comes from government via ourselves and goes direct to schools. And I'm talking about maintained schools, not academies here, because academies are funded differently. But we have little flexibility now in the way that school funding is provided by ourselves. In fact, we've had to move over the recent years, and we're nearly there, and we have to move to the national funding formula, which would give us very little flexibility whatsoever in terms of how we fund our schools. But so this report actually sets out the specific funding factors which are to be used, and the weightings between the different sectors and pupils within schools. There's a few exceptions where we apply to the Educational Skills Funding Agency for approval to be given. That is largely around some school rents, which are unavoidably out of kilter with what the formula says. There's also, it explains the central budget provision, that is the amount of money that we actually have, which is actually the dedicated schools grant for schools, the amount of funding that we have centrally as an authority to support schools, excuse me, and then amount of money that there is for early years schools or funding as well. And there's also, it also sets out some de-delegation arrangements whereby schools have agreed for the authority to keep some schools, some funding, which we then apportion, or we fund schools through that budget to support various different services which would otherwise be a strain on their resources. And all this has to be, the arrangements that we're making has to be with the ESFA by the 20th, in a few days' time. That isn't the final amount that the schools will get, though, because that funding, or the arrangements as we've set out, has to be approved by the ESFA, and then schools will finally be told exactly what they will be receiving. What we do know, though, is that the government, in terms of the overall budget, has agreed an up rate of 4.4% for primary school children and 5.45% for secondary school pupils. That, as you will know, is less than the actual cost of living increases or the rate of inflation that there is at the moment. So whilst the government has, in attempting to, well, in funding schools, has attempted to protect education, they have given schools a bigger uplift than they have to other public services. It's still not enough to cover that cost of living increases in terms of fuel and food and other services that schools have to pay for. The Schools Forum is intrinsic in all of this, in working out how these arrangements will be settled. They have agreed the arrangements that are set out in this report, and they agree that it should be sent, that they do approve that it goes to the ESFA, and that the consultation arrangements that we have undertaken are fully compliant with what they should be. So this report here is really for you to accept the Schools Forum recommendations, that the arrangements set out in this report are agreed. And the recommendations there at point 7 are the specific recommendations that we need to take into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carol Patterson. Councillor Viv Kendrick.
Thank you, Leader. I'm really happy to second this and ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations. As Councillor Patterson has said, the cost of living crisis and energy costs are really challenging for schools, and the income they have is limited. And of course, we still reap the whirlwind of the high needs deficit that has had a continuing negative impact on budgets for schools for quite a lot of years now. But in spite of that, I think the Schools Forum have come to some good decisions, and I would very happily second that.
Thank you, Councillor Viv Kendrick, and thanks, Councillor Carol Patterson, and thank you to the Schools Forum, who actually have been established for quite a number of years, and the amount of work they've done to make sure that we keep the education system ticking along, despite the fact that, you know, the budgets are diminishing. So on that note, can I have a show of hands? Thank you, members. Next item is item 11, making changes to provision of for pupils with special education needs. Councillor Carol Patterson. Carol, over to you.
Thank you. Yes, this report sets out some arrangements to change the way that special educational needs are met, basically on Netherhall Learning Campus, the 3 schools that are there. It all is part of the transformation plan that we have got for SEND provision across Kirklees. We also have to remove some additionally resource provision which has been at Netherhall campus, which has been therefore or not used, I should say, for a couple of years now. It was additional provision for children with physical disabilities, and now we find that the need is more for children with social and emotional and mental health issues that we need to provide for. So basically this report is actually changing the type of pupil, that the provision for pupils with special educational needs who are supported at Netherhall Learning Campus. There's an awful lot of information here, and basically this is a very legal process that we need to go through to consider the arrangements that are being suggested, both in taking the existing arrangements away and proposing the new arrangements. A meeting has been held of what's SOAG, which is the Schools Organisation Arrangements, I'm not sure what the G stands for, group, but that is they go through the fine detail of the proposals, and that's what you have got here in this report. You've got every factor that's been considered in making these arrangements, and their recommendation from SOAG is that we should agree that these changes should be made to special educational needs at Netherhall campus. But this cabinet here today is the final decision-making body, so I hope that you can agree to the establishment of the new additionally resource provision for complex communication and interaction needs at Netherhall, and the removal of the 5 places that were there for physical impairment. And that's the recommendation of the report. Thank you.
Councillor Kendrick.
Thank you very much, Leader. I very much support this. It demonstrates how this is an approach meeting current needs for children with specific needs, in this case social, emotional and mental health needs, and really puts in place the opportunity for children to have the right sort of education and care within a mainstream school environment, and has to be, in my view, thoroughly recommended. I support Councillor Pattison in recommending this to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick and Councillor Pattison. This is part of the SEND transformational plan. I'm sure you've all read the report. And it's a positive way forward. So can I have a show of hands that we approve the report? Thank you, members. Item 12, calculation of council tax base 2023-24, reference to council. Councillor Paul Davies.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think all members will recognise this particular paper. It comes to council each year. It's a very technical issue, and today clearly looking for approval to move this forward. But there is an additional issue I want to discuss today, and it should be noted that a number of councils do take the decision around this issue at Cabinet, or they have delegated it to the Section 151 officer, and then the calculation forms part of the budget papers. We in Kirklees have practice has been to take this report both to Cabinet and to Council. However, given the very technical nature of this report and the fact that the calculation anyway forms part of the annual budget papers, this report also requests that the Cabinet considers delegating future annual CTB calculations from 2024-25 onwards to the Council's Section 151 officer in consultation with the corporate portfolio holder. So if we move straight through to recommendations specifically, within those, you'll see that it commences by asking for the requirements of Section 67 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 requires that the council tax base for council tax should be approved by the authority. So it is recommended the Cabinet note the report and appendices to this report and approve the 2023-24 council tax base, CTB, for the whole of Kirklees area at 123 and 215.79, and the council tax bases for the 5 parish and town council areas are set out in the report. But in addition, as I mentioned earlier, that the Cabinet approved the proposal to delegate future annual CTB calculations from 2024-25 onwards to the Council's Section 151 officer in consultation with the corporate portfolio holder. This is due to the fact that it is, as I said, a very technical report, and the fact that this calculation anyway forms part of the annual budget papers for member consideration at Budget Council. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paul Davis, and thanks for the report, and thank you to Eamon Croston, who's our Section 151 officer, and his team for putting this hard work in. You'll also be aware that Eamon Croston is, for many, many years, he'll be leaving the council. So he's not leaving straight away. He'll be doing the budget and then leaving, but this will probably be his last budget in this council that he'll be overseeing. So I'd like to put on record all our best wishes to Eamon for the hard work and dedication he has provided this council for many, many years, and especially during the last 5-10 years where we've been through major challenges, and I wish him all the best. So I'm sure all Cabinet members will agree best of luck for the future in whatever Eamon does. On that note, can I just ask for a show of hands that we approve the report? Thank you, members. Next item is item 13. Adults and Health Commission for external consultancy to support a comprehensive diagnostic and subsequent change programme. Councillor Muscan is not here today, so can I ask Councillor Paul Davis to present the report on her behalf? Thank you, Paul.
Yep, of course. Thanks, Leader. As we know at the moment, there's a significant degree of financial uncertainty that we're facing, both as a local authority and obviously more widely throughout the UK, but particularly for us. As we know through many discussions in the budget, there are still very great difficulties in understanding the future picture and still some volatility. And that's particularly so in the area we're referring to now. The report is proposing some specific work which will allow us to be clearer about the pressures, risks and opportunities over the next 5 years in the largest single controllable budget in the Council. And it'll help us to get greater certainty for planning purposes, which clearly is essential going forward. So there is a need for some external capacity to enable this to be done at pace. We can't spend lots of time waiting to do this. We really need to start commencing the work as soon as possible, given the financial challenges that this Council faces and the operational pressures in adult social care that are impacted our internal capacity. This will need to go through the procurement process, and the recommendation is to delegate the decision-making to the relevant officers to award the contract at the conclusion of that process. And if the outcome of this early work indicates opportunities for significant cashable and non-cashable savings, we may commission further work with the consultancy. That's obviously going to be subject to further discussion. So the specifics on this in terms of the Section 6 and the recommendations, it's firstly that the Cabinet note the activity undertaken to date and the proposed approach with 4 phases and 2 decision points. And that we're asking Cabinet to delegate the decision to evaluate and award a call-off contract following a mini-competition using Lot 7 of the Crown Commercial Service Management Framework Agreement to the Strategic Director of Adults and Health in consultation with the Strategic Director of Corporate Strategy, Commissioning and Public Health and the Section 151 Officer and the portfolio holders for health and social care and corporate services in order to be able to implement phases 1 to 3 at pace. The delegation will include decisions relating to phase 1, which is the modelling exercise, phase 2, the presentation of findings, and then phase 3, the actual production of the change programme plan. And then, at that stage, a further report will be made to Cabinet on the progress made at the end of phase 3, so that a decision can then be taken on whether to move forward with phase 4 and whether to continue to use the same consultancy or even to procure another company to support that. Those are the full recommendations. Would like to put that to Cabinet. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Paul Davies, for that comprehensive report and for all the work that all the officers have put in behind this. So, can I ask Cabinet to show hands to approve the report? Thank you, members. That is the end of the meeting. So, once again, thank you for all for attending, and have a nice day and good night. Bye-bye.